All right, I'm going to walk you guys through basically the way that this works. But this right here is that Spot Hog cam lean laser. You see this track right here, okay? Right there. There's going to be a light laser, right? Shines right down through there. So what we do is we take this flat spot where there's this cutout and you rest it up here on a perfectly plain level spot on the cam. And we're going to be looking to see where it shines down on, okay, tilt down a little bit more, onto the lower cam there. Now, in a perfect world, right, this laser is going to shine perfectly right there in the middle or right alongside it, okay? The closer we can get it, the better. We're going to do this at full draw, so I'm going to run this back on the draw board. I'm only going to show you the lower cam right now because we're going to be leaving this up against the upper cam. And I want you guys to see where that laser is. Basically, if it's off, we can shim it one direction or the other to get it to shine on there perfectly or as close to perfect as possible. All we need to do is press it and change which top hat is in there. So let's go ahead and get this run back. I need to make sure you guys are going to be clear of the string. It looks like you're going to clear just fine. Oh, I had to take out the string stop for this because I know from previous experience the laser's just going to shine on the string stop. Believe it or not, your string stop is kind of a big piece in your tune as well. If you have it out too close to the string to where it is actually physically making contact, that can cause weird stuff with your tune. I speak from experience on that. Okay, we're at full draw. Basically, with your string stop, you want about like maybe a business card and a half to maybe 2 business cards worth of space there between that and your string, but I'll show you that later. So we're going to turn this laser on. I'm going to lay it completely flat up against this cam, and we're going to rock this back, and it looks like it's shining just to the inside of that yoke cable there, this yoke string, okay? Kind of shining right down along there, so I think we can probably get it a little bit closer. Now, the thing that's crazy with this is you don't shim this cam the way that you would think that it shims, okay? I'll explain that in a minute. So basically it's towards the outside of the bow. And let's go ahead and check this lower one. So for that, I need to tilt you guys back up. Okay, that'll work pretty good. And we're gonna lay this flat up against the cam here. You need to make sure that this is flush. Otherwise you're gonna get a bad reading. Okay, so this one's perfect. I mean, that's right where I want that at. It's right there. So we can't really do anything about that one, but we can shim this upper cam over and see if we can get that laser to line up perfect. So we need to do another camera angle swap and put this in the bow press. Alright, so I got the bow off the draw board. Something I'd like to say is these fingers, you want to make sure that they're even, because getting this axle out is easy, but sometimes getting it back in is difficult. If you're having a difficult time, it's probably because you didn't press both sides of these limbs evenly. So what I do, because under tension is what matters, is I make sure that this is set up right in the center of the limb. The fingers here on this press are on the side that you intend to pull the axle out of, because if you side load it, it's going to kind of twist the limb just barely enough to really make it an absolute chore. And even though I'm doing my due diligence to make sure that this is on there perfect, it's not going to surprise me if we have a little bit of technical difficulties, because it always seems to happen whenever I do this. There's always going to be something that pops up, but we're going to hope that it's just going to be smooth sailing. So anyway, both sides, you want to make sure both the sides of the fingers are even. Like on your upper end, if you're swapping something out on your upper one, is more important than the lower one, but if you have that lower one where one of those fingers is kind of in a little bit more, it kind of puts a little more pressure on the upper side one opposite of it, and that can be a problem for you. So just save yourself some headache and just make sure that you're getting these as close to perfectly linear as possible. And then I take a moderate amount of weight off the bow. It's not like I'm I'm pressing it as much as what I normally would to twist a cable up or anything. But you know, somewhere about here is good, enough to where you can kind of almost get the string off the cam. Seems to work out pretty well for me. And so now you're going to take just the appropriate sized tool here, and we're going to back that bolt out. Don't drop it. And then there's going to be just below that like a washer here. Okay. And so I have a magnetic dish. It'll just sit in there. And then I'm going to grab the appropriate size Allen key tool. You've taken off all the hardware you need to at this point, but this is big enough it's not going to go into the hole in the axle that bolt threaded into, but it's large enough that it'll fit through the limbs and also fit through the top hats. So you're just going to line it up there against the axle, and we're going to press the axle out. Okay. Based on how smooth that came out, right? So this is going to go all the way through, right? Based on how smooth that came out, I'm fairly optimistic that it's going to go in easier than what it sometimes does. But I probably shouldn't have said anything, because now, boy, it's going to be an absolute torturous chore. I like to, while it's out, just make sure you don't need to over tighten these or anything, but just make sure they're not loose and are going to walk out on you. So what I have here is like these little magnetic clips, and they're going to come in handy, because what you don't want to do is when you take this off, allow any of these cables or strings or anything to come off. You want to keep them kind of in the place that they're in now, and because if you let them come off and become untwisted, all that work that we did to make sure things were tuning in time, you basically just created more work for yourself. So I will just generally just go ahead and set these here in these two clips. Now I know nothing can come off and get knocked loose on me. And so what we're going to do now is take that same Allen key that we used to press the axle, and we're going to go ahead and push out these top hats. And I'll show you why they call them top hats. If you haven't seen these before, they're very, very appropriately named, but basically these are them, and this is the way they were sitting in there. So they kind of look like a little top hat, right? Basically what we need to do is, this is the fatter end of the two. You probably can't make that out, but you see this raised edge here? Okay, one of these is thicker than the other, and actually, let me do this. So you have, you know, basically the shim diameter that they're looking for, I believe, is 180 thousandths. Let me see. Okay, so this one is 104. Oh, I bumped it. It read 104 before I turned it around. But basically 104. The other one is probably going to be like in the ballpark of 75, 76. Come on. Yeah, perfect. What do you know? 76. So 180 thousandths is kind of what they're after for total shim capacity. It's important that you're putting that back in. So we know the two of these, right? This measurement, right? This thicker spot. If we stack these together, these two are 180 thousandths. I know that the thicker one basically went away from me. So what we're going to do is we're going to look for the next size. Sometimes you can just flip these if that's the way you need the laser to go, because that didn't quite give me enough. I'm looking for the next set, and if you'll notice, what makes these a matching set is there's lines here. So on this one there's 2 lines, right? And on this one there's 1, and that's what you want. What you're looking at, right, you would think, oh, 2 lines with 2 lines. No, what you're looking at is where these notches are made in relation to the top hat itself. So these are kind of up at the end. You've got 2 here and 1 here. That makes them a matching set. Following that logic, this would be a matching set, right? You can really see the difference between the two of these, how thick this one is versus how thin this one is. And the lines are down here near the bottom, okay? There's 2 here and 1 here. That makes them a set. The ones that we're looking for are going to be these ones here. This is the next set in order. So these lines are in the middle. There's 1 here and 2 here, okay? And you can see The one raised edge here is substantially thinner than this one. So what we're going to do is, because we need to get more clearance that direction to put more stress on the cam that direction, to therefore cause the cam to lean, aka cam lean. These ones were the ones that were in there, okay? So the fatter of the two was on this limb. The thinner of the two was on this limb. So we need to put the fatter of the two in the same place where the fatter of the previous two were at. And the thinner of the two is going to go in the opposite side, okay? What that causes it to do is now the cam is spaced further away from this limb. And you may be asking yourself, well, that doesn't make any sense, because the laser, you're basically shimming the cam towards where the dot of the laser is. You would think that you need to shim it the opposite direction to get that laser to move. That's not the case, because when you come to draw, right, based on, you know, where this roller guard is here for the cables, it pulls the cams that direction with the limbs, right? So if we space it further, we're basically introducing greater cam lean towards that roller guard. However, there wasn't technically quite enough because it was on the offside of that cam. So we're going to see if, after putting this in there, if we get perfect alignment. That's just the way it works. So now we're going to take, you need to make sure all your strings and stuff are on there. I almost messed up. Getting this in there sometimes can be a little bit of a challenge. It's been my experience that if you just kind of walk your cam around, that you can get it to drop in there a little easier. It probably doesn't matter, like we took the axle out from this side, I'm going to put it in that side because that's just what I do. It probably wouldn't matter if you put it on the other end. I mean, they look the same either way. I'm just, you know, kind of a creature of habit and pay attention to small details. So we're going to put the axle back in there, and we're going to get it started through the bearing here, okay, and it slid through there. And now we're going to walk the cam back, and we should be able to feel it. If we kind of manipulate this cam around, we should be able to feel it just get started. This is always the hard part. This is the spot that hangs you up doing this. Nope, there it goes. Look at that. All right. I may not even have to, yep, sweet. I didn't even have to tap on that one. That was easier than you could have expected. Honestly, it's really hard to get these perfect, and so those holes, you want them to kind of line up on each other like that when you're feeding the axle through. Sometimes they'll be off just enough that it really creates, I mean, and I'm talking like a fraction of a millimeter, and it creates a whole freaking complicated process where you have to take something heavy, and you're not heavy, of course, enough to damage anything here, but, you know, kind of tapping and stuff. Sometimes you have to do that. There's other bow manufacturers like the newer Bowtechs and stuff. They have kind of a cool way of shimming things over where you don't have to take the axle out or any of that kind of stuff. You know, this is previous to that, and I'm not sure about the newer Matthews models. They're on the lift now. I'm fairly certain they use the same system, but I could be wrong. There is some pros or some advantages to this type of the system, like, for example, because once the bow has tension on it, obviously that can't move and it can't shim on you. If you have like a screw that you loosen up on the back side and then you tighten another screw or loosen that same screw to kind of walk the cam back and forth, obviously there's opportunity for that to move on you. This way, because it's fixed hard pieces, it can't go anywhere. So I mean, yeah, it's a little less user friendly, but it's a little more secure in my opinion. Anyway, so now that we've gotten that, let's go ahead and make sure all of our cables and stuff are on, good to go. And we'll go ahead and depress the bow. I have some new goodies showing up this week from Last Chance Archery and Lancaster Archery Supply. Replacing the wheel, or the crank on that with the wheel and stuff, so I'm pretty excited for that. Let's go ahead and get a camera angle swap again, and we'll see what we got for cam lean. Stay tuned. Alright, so I figured I'd take a second to explain to you guys what we just did. to help it make a little more sense. So basically this was the set that we were using, okay? And you may not be able to tell on video, but this side right here, this is what we're looking at, is this end, the thicker end, right? It is wider in this direction than this one is, right? Let me get a more exaggerated option or example for you. These are the ones that just came out of there, right? And this is how they were oriented into the bow, was like this. Let me get a more exaggerated option to show you. This is another set, okay? And you can see the very obvious differences here, okay? So this one, this shim right here, this area on this side is very, very thin compared to this side. This is a matching set, okay? This is like the more extreme version. You can put these in either which way, but basically the thicker of the two that we took out was towards this side of the bow, okay? The thinner of the two was towards this side of the bow. So I'm going to grab the ones that we took out again. Now, just know the one that's here in my left hand is thinner than the one that's in my right, okay? These are what was in there. What we've done is we put the next size where this end is even thicker still, and this end is slightly thinner. The reason we've done that is to shim the cam towards where the laser was shining. If you recall, the laser was pointing on this cam right here. It was pointing about right here. We want it to be as close to center as perfect. So if you look here, this roller guard, okay, your cables come from near center line here and they kind of deflect out, and then it hits that roller guard and then they deflect in. And so what's happening is when you bring your bow, right, to full draw, these cams that are here at full draw, they are being pulled towards where these cables are at, right? So what we want to do is, assuming that we had to do the work that we were doing to the upper cam, assuming we had to do it to the lower one, if we shim it out, it's going to pull harder, which is going to put it more in line with the next cam. So let me show you, okay? Now that we've explained all that, let's come to full draw. Okay, we're at full draw. Now, if you recall, our laser was shining like somewhere abouts in there, okay? Let's go ahead and put this flush up against this cam. And look at that. We are right on that cam there. I don't think we can get it any closer than that. That's pretty much perfect. So what we've done basically is by shimming the opposite cam towards where the laser was at, it put us perfectly in line with that next cam. Don't think that we'll need to check or to change anything with the other one, but let's go ahead and verify that nothing changed up here. Yep, we're still right in the center. Here, let me show you. Starting to figure this video thing out. All right, so we'll put this flush up against the cam. And there's the laser right there in the middle of the cam. So, cam lean is done. We are perfect. On to the next thing.